All right. Hi, everyone. Hello. Am I audible to all of you? Awesome. Great. How is everyone doing? Give me a second to quickly fix up a few things so that we can get started. Weekend mode. Okay. Then we won't take much time. I just also want the participant list to pop up. All right. Okay. Welcome everyone to today's session. Today we are actually going to complete a bunch of very small topics. Okay, they're quite easy in the sense that you must have kind of know some of them already, right? And even if you don't, they're very simplistic mathematical topics, so it won't be taking a much of time. I will be quickly walking through you all those different topics, right? And they are again very crucial, again forming the very simple backbone of how exactly do you solve the questions when we will move on to problem solving classes as well. Okay, so we'll start with the part where we left off in the last class, where we talked about how exactly do we take input from, or how exactly do we print something on the console, or how do we output on the console anything that you want. So that is what we've already covered. Now we'll quickly go ahead and jump right into the part of how exactly do you really take an input from the console, wherein you want the user to, let's say, give you an input, and that input is actually becoming a part of the program. How to set folder structure in VS Code. Sarvan, what issue are you facing in that? It's just basic structure, right? You go to a file and you just create a new folder in that. Is there any specific area? Or I did share a bunch of articles also. Did that not help? Did you guys watch the recordings I shared, where it was shown how exactly do you have to set up VS Code and how exactly do you have to set up IntelliJ and everything? And it was, recordings were available for both Windows and Mac systems. Venkat, did you see them? Anmol, no rule whatsoever. Feel free to check whichever ID you want. Both are equally good. My personal preference is with IntelliJ, so I will be using IntelliJ, but you can use VS Code as well. For setting up the part, I would recommend, I actually shared a bunch of videos in the chat in the very start of the course, which had the proper installation steps for both VS Code and IntelliJ. So if anyone is having trouble setting up those, right, please just go ahead and I would say just watch those. And if there are still any issues, right, you can come back and I can maybe share more resources and I can help you out in setting it up. Some issue with naming the package starting from a number, then I was not able to make a Java class inside that IntelliJ. So ideally, you should not be able to create a package millionth with a number it starts. Similar is how a Java file, it won't allow you to do that. For example, here, if I do new, and it's valid not just for IntelliJ, but for every case. So if you do something like this, so here it will allow you that. But I feel like when you will do it for the class, it should ideally not. Okay, 1 second. This is a folder. I want to create a package. I feel like with package also, it should not allow you. Does it allow you here? Let's say 3. Oh, okay. Now new file. My bad. I want to add a class. Is it allowing you all to add a class? Ideally, you should not be able to have classes, with the integer value. So kind of just make sure you check on that. Okay, I'm just removing it. I think probably you will be able to have packages, but you'll definitely not be able to have classes with it. Let me just remove that. We don't require this. Okay. Yes, correct. You should not be able to do that, Sumit. So if I will try to do Java class, let's say to hello something like this, it says it's not a valid qualifier name. So similar is the rule for variables also. Even with variables, it will not allow you to do that. Okay. But as a good developer, we should take care of naming the packages, naming and class name. Yes. So Akshat, yes, you have to take care of the namings over there. Basic conventions, even Java won't allow you to do that. Okay. Perfect. All right then. Let's say today we add for, let me add expression. Okay, new class. Yes, Willin, you can do that. Okay, all right. We'll get started now. We'll get started now and move on our journey first to talk about Java input and output. Right? Just one last thing, another which I wanted to kind of introduce was how do you exactly print the variables? We didn't have a very detailed discussion over that. So over here, we know that if we need to simply print something, it's very simple in that case. And you can just like a string is between double quotes. So you are able to print those values. For example, let's say you want to print variables over here, right? For example, you have int value equal to 10, something like this. And if you want to print this value, right? Again, that is very simple over here. You just go ahead and just print val over here. So whatever is the value, you can just go ahead and print it. You can do this also, or if you prefer to directly just go ahead and, you know, if you don't want to print a variable, but let's say you want to directly print any integer value or any constant value as such, you can do that as well. And you can just do file. Okay. So if you will try to run this now, what you will see is hello will definitely be printed right on the screen. Apart from that, since you have to, let's say, print the value inside a variable, you would be using, and you can just directly do val over here and it will print the value for you, right? And then if let's say you directly want to print a constant value, constant as in directly an integer value, you are able to do that as well. Okay. Apart from that, it is also possible to print concatenated strings. For example, I want to do something like this. I want to do I. There are two strings, but I want to print both of them together. So I can do this. So there's a plus sign over here, which could be used to do that. I am awesome at programming. Okay. So you can also go ahead and try to do this concatenation kind of like a format also in order to print this. There is a lot of details about this that we will go in detail and talk about. But for simplicity, you can assume that this is also working. Okay. If you want to do something over the sense of where two different things that needs to be printed are of different data types, even that is possible. For example, also you could be printing something like this, and then you can do val, right? So if you will see on both sides of it, Here there is a string, but along with that, you have a integer variable or integer data type over here. If you will try to run this one as well, it will try to, again, because of the plus sign over here, it will try to concatenate both. So number equal to is this much part, which is over here. Okay. And then there is a part of how val is overwritten over here. So instead of directly printing, so some of you might expect that this could be printed, right? No, here this is a variable, so the value inside this variable will be picked up, and that is what actually is going to be printed. So there is a plus sign which can be used inside system.out.println, which can be used to print two strings which can be concatenated with each other, and even if they are different, it will work the same way. How exactly does it work? And what's the internal idea of how the compiler understands that I don't have to print val, but actually the value inside val is something of a concept we are going to discuss in the next few classes, which goes by the concept of typecasting and, changing one data type to another, right? But for the time being, you can understand that if you will do something like this, the code will actually take up the variable value. Clear to everyone? Just keep writing quick yeses in the chat. Today's class is not like a very difficult kind of a class where we have to do very heavy topics, right? We have to do some fundamental mathematical and similar topics like that. So we'll just kind of move ahead. And if in case nobody has any doubts, but if you have, please make sure you call those questions out. Okay, awesome. So this is one thing. The next thing now we will talk about is how, after this, the next thing that we will talk about is how do you take input, okay? So Java actually provides to us different, I would say, ways to get input from the user, okay? There are multiple ways available, but the most popular one and the simplest one and I would say the one which is omnipotent and everywhere present is the scanner class, okay? So there is another class like which we are going to kind of, you can say, class libraries only, which we initially talked about, which are present in GRE, which we are going to use over here in order to be able to take an input from the user. So to do that, first of all, you need to make sure that the particular class library is present in this particular file. Okay. So for that, if you want to use any particular class library into your file, you have to use the import statement followed by java.util.scanner. So scanner is actually the name of the class, which actually helps us to take user input. Can we print values without concatenation? Asif, I showed that over here, right? This is how we are not using any concatenation statement and printing the values of a variable. And Akshat, no, this concept doesn't work over here in, I would say, Java. That concept, I think it works in, I know in JavaScript also it doesn't work. Does it work with C, C++? In cout kind of like statements? So I know some other languages it does work, but in Java it does not. Okay. Asif, can you give an example of what exactly your question is? Okay, in Python also it works, maybe yes. I'm not like, it's been some time I've written the code. I know in C# it doesn't. In C# also you have to use plus only, right? But yeah, maybe I remember in C and C++ probably it works. But again, do check on your end. I know the comma thing is also there, but again, in Java, it won't work. Okay. Like I said, Asif, the comma thing doesn't work. Okay. The comma syntax won't work over here in print statement. Okay. That is not recognizable by Java as a language. Awesome. Moving on. So like I said, scanner is basically a class over here, right, which we have to use in order to be able to actually take input from the user, right? So the first thing that you have to do is always make sure you have this import statement over here. And now in order to use the object of in order to use this actually to make sure that we are able to take the user of an input, we have to create an object of the class. Okay, again, like I said, initially it won't make sense what a class is, what are objects of a class is, right? These are again oops concepts which will come down the lane when we start with data structures. For the time being, just understand that you have to basically write this import statement where a scanner class basically comes into picture, and moving on from that, you just have to kind of create an object of this class. Every class can only be used through objects. So you will have to write a statement like this. Now, again, don't feel scared that, what exactly I have written, what is the scanner, what is system.in, what is new, right? Don't get afraid by all of that. All of that will actually come later when we talk about objects and classes. For the time being, just know that system.out is something that you will have to introduce to kind of put an output, and then you will have to write this particular piece of code with system.in representing that some input needs to be taken. Okay. So in this class, in this particular line, what is basically happening is we are basically creating an object of the scanner class, right? And after that, you will write the statement of how do you take the input from the user. So you do int number, right? And you do input, which is this value input that you wrote over here. And then again, there are multiple options available of what kind of input you want. Okay. If I am writing next int, right? Let's take a quick look what next int basically means, right? So next int basically is going to take the input from the user, which is going to be an integer value. Okay. So over here, a user will give the integer value and you will have the output. Okay. Let's take a quick demo for that. For the time being, I'm just commenting out this code so that the first line that actually gets executed is this, right? And I will explain you the flow of code also, so that it makes sense what exactly is happening. So let's say I say enter an integer value. Okay. And let's say I am just doing print. I'm not doing print ln. So the cursor will not go into the next line. And after that, I am expecting the user to basically give an input. Okay. And whatever input the user will give, it is basically going to be stored in this int number kind of a variable. Okay. So whatever input the user will give, which is going to be an integer value, will be stored in this number variable. So in your computer memory, there will be a number, I would say container, but the container name would be number, and your input given by the user will be stored in this. Okay. And after that, let's say we want to check if the right value was printed or not, right? So you say you entered over here this. Okay, just to kind of see if everything is working fine or not. So this is the way you are kind of trying to take the input and understand the code. Let's see, once we'll execute now, we'll actually understand what exactly is happening. See, it says enter an integer value. And if you will randomly click anywhere in this console, you will see that the cursor is on the very same line, right? So what is happening is you do enter an integer value. So the line number 21 is basically executed and your program is currently stopped at this particular line. Okay. Input dot next int. So you will see line number 25 is not executed, right? Why? Because your program is still stuck at line number 23, where it is expecting a user input. Now it could be any kind of input, right? But it is going to halt over here until and unless I do some keyboard operation, right? So if I do 25 and it just moved ahead after this, took the basically input I gave from my keyboard, which was 25. stored it in a variable number, right? And when I do U entered, that number variable was actually rightly populated. And that's why when I try to print the output, it is actually getting and printing the right output. Okay, so this is how you can take the user input, store it somewhere in your computer memory, and then use it for future purpose. Right? I think, let me take up a question. Ma'am, how did you do multi-line comments? I think Sayantan was basically asking that this was the code like this, and how come without using those stars, I was able to comment everything. So what I did was, I just selected all of it, and I just did command and /. Okay, Sayantan, and it basically comments all of these lines in the form of single line comments only, but all of them together. Clear? So you do command, or in your system, it would be control /. Okay. First, select the code and just so it's also like quick and nicely done. Okay. Does it halt the execution of code, bytecode? I think Puneet, I've answered that question, right? Perfect. That's why I was saying, just like sit back and listen to me. I know most of the time what questions can come to your mind. So I already try to resolve them when explaining the concept. Okay. So this is how basically you can take input from the user, right? Again, this concept doesn't just work for an integer value, right? You may as well just do something like this over here as well, where you are trying to take a floating point input also. So let's say you do my float. Again, I'm trying to follow camel casing because it's a good convention, right? And you do input dot next float. So you will see next float over here, which will accept a floating point input. Okay. Let's say again, you have some double input that you want to accept. So you do my double over here and you do input. So always input should be there, which object was created, and then you can choose. Okay. It is automatically recommending you next double only. Okay. And then let's say you want to take a string as an input. Okay. Again, string we have not done in detail, but just for the understanding purpose, I'm explaining you that this is how strings can come into picture as well. Let's say you want the user to give not just like a single integer or a character or a double value in input, you want them to actually give an entire string input. So you can do input dot next. Okay. So all the functions are very, I would say, easily available, right? You don't have to do a bunch of things, right? All kind of input values are available. Now you just have to kind of, whatever input is given, you can just print it to verify everything is working fine or not. Okay, so this is how you can take a user input and understand how exactly the values can be taken in from the console and presented and printed on the screen. Akshay, questions which are not like in the current scope, we'll try to take at the end of the session. Okay, so that we don't kind of divert from the flow of the session. Okay, if there's any questions like these, I'll help you out towards the end. All right. Yes, next and next line, both are basically used to take input from the user screen only, right? And the basic difference between next and next line would be, I always prefer to use next line, okay? And then I try to pass the string. When you use next, right, it will only basically return to you what comes before the delimiter, okay? Because when you give an input as a string, there could be, I would say, white spaces also. So the moment a white space will come, the next will only give you, for example, I give an input in the string, hello, my name is Ria, right? So if you will use next, it will only take up hello, because after that, there was a delimiter white space, okay? But if you will use next line, it will take the entire line input which has been given. That's the most high level difference between both of them. So like just to write it down over here, when you are using next, okay, I'm writing it here only. This is basically used to read a word from the user. Okay, so it could be a single word, apple, mango, bananas. But if you want to, let's say, read an entire line, okay, my favorite fruit is banana. So it basically reads a line of text from the user. Clear to everyone? Any questions? Any other questions? So there are multiple delimiters, Ronak, that you can add from yourself also, right? But you will have to define those. Like it could be a dot also, it could be an apostrophe also, right? Like it could be anything like this. But you'll have to kind of delimiters, and then means that at what point, at what point your input kind of breaks in between, right? So delimiter is that if you basically do a space, right? It basically means that you are not really considering the input after the space part, and it will stop the moment it kind of encounters a space. Okay, so that is what the meaning of delimiter exactly is. And we can change the delimiter based on our purpose. For example, I want to kind of say that my delimiter should be an exclamation mark. So that means the moment an exclamation mark will basically be encountered, your code, or after that, whatever is the input, that won't really be, I would say, considered. And I see another question. What delimiter for next line? No, so understand that the concept is a little different. When you use scanner dot next line, Aditya, it doesn't uses the delimiter pattern. It uses its internal one to check for every instance of a new line. You can think of it as enter, but it doesn't work really on the concept of delimiter as such. Why don't you try out, Ankan, and see what happens? I'll give quick 2 minutes, not more than that, for everyone to quickly try out this scanner part, right? I would recommend not just go by my part as in what I'm saying, right? Try to experiment once on your own as well, see what exactly happens, right? Try to break the code as much as you can, right? Play with it and see what all you can do. Okay, I'll just give 2 minutes, not more than that though. Okay, go ahead. Yes, Akshat. Ideally, we should get error, right? I'm trying to give a raw. So I'm trying to store a value. For example, I say whatever is the user input, I will store it in a int container, right? But I give a character input. So that is like compatibility is not there. Like these small things, don't even ask me. Just go ahead, try it out. Right, like it says children learn by making and breaking. That's how you are also going to learn as well. Whenever there is some thought in your head, just go ahead, write this down. And if you don't understand the output, then I'm here at your service to help you out to understand why is something behaving like that. Okay. And when you're done and when you've given a try and everything is working for you, just write a quick yes in the chat. I'll count how many of you are done and then we'll move forward. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3 people are done. Okay. So, and then the concept of delimiter is clear, right? If I give an output, if I use next and give an input, for example, hello, my name is, right? So because I've written next, only the string that will be considered is hello, or the only word that is considered is hello. Okay, it won't store anything after that. So if I do this string name equal to this, right? And if I give the input hello, my name is like that, so it will only store hello. Okay, but if I give next line, then name will basically store this entire string, right? And why does next basically just store hello and not my? Because there is a space in between, which is a breaking condition. Whenever a space is encountered, everything after that won't be considered. Okay. Quickly giving one last minute. Awesome. So now that we are done with Java input and output, we will now talk about operators in Java. Okay, because operators are going to be very crucial whenever we are going to do any mathematical computation and whenever we are actually writing logical code as well. Okay, so that is why we are going to now talk a little bit about operators in Java, which is very similar to what operators you would have already known and studied in your school and your colleges as well. Okay, so just to define very quickly, what are operators? Operators are basically symbols that perform operations, okay, on variables and values. Okay, for example, one of the very famous examples of operator would be plus. It is basically an operator used for addition, right? Similarly, star is an operator. So you have multiply sign, which is sort of like a cross. Here in Java, we are going to use, I would say, star operator, which is going to depict, or an operator which is used for multiplication. Okay. Ma'am, what will happen if we... Ankan, you didn't try? That is what I was telling you, that if you will just quickly go ahead and try this out, you will know what is happening. So you can try this out over here. Just work on the concept of learn by doing. Let's say it says enter an integer value. I do hello. And it gives you a very valid and a very readable error. It says input mismatch exception, okay, which is going to be executed over here. And it does, and it is input mismatch, right? We wanted to take an integer as an input, but we actually gave as a string. So that is where the error is coming. Okay. Because I have specifically defined a container with a constraint that it can only take integer values. So if I will do anything apart from this, it is bound to give me error. Clear? Awesome. Okay. Okay, so now we have basically operators in Java are classified, I would say, into six major types, in fact. Okay, the first is going to be arithmetic operators. The second is going to be assignment operators. The third is going to be relational operators. The fourth is going to be logical operators. The fifth is going to be unary operators. And the sixth is going to be bitwise operators. In today's session, we'll mostly focus on the first 5 ones. Bitwise operators will come very exclusively in bit manipulation classes, where we talk about how bitwise operators really work, what's the purpose, and bitwise operators are considered to be very fast. And we'll understand also the reason why they are considered to be so fast. Okay. So first we will talk about arithmetic operators. So let's learn by doing only, because we'll see all thing in actions over there. Always make sure you have this main function available. Okay. Now, arithmetic operators, right, are basically used to perform arithmetic or basic mathematical operations on variables and data. Okay. A few examples in the ones that we usually use is, let's say int a is equal to 12 and int b is equal to 5. Okay. If there are multiple variables to be declared, remember that you can do so in the very same line as well, like this, comma separated. Okay. And you don't have to mention again the data type for b. It would be assumed to be int only. Okay. Let's say I do a minus b, right? Directly, it will give me the output. This is a subtraction operation. Let's say I do a plus b, so it will give me the addition output. If I do a star b, this is going to be for multiplication, right? If I do a this b, so this is a division operator where in the output, it is going to give me the quotient of the division. Okay. And if I do this, right, it is basically modulo operator, which again is division only, but as an output, it is going to give me the remainder. Okay. So this is basically known as the division operation, and this is basically known as the modulo operator. Can you all quickly guess the output that will appear on the screen when I quickly print the output over here? I just want to see how many quickly remember the basic maths. Just write all the 5 outputs together. Okay, so let's run this and see what will be the output. And you can see it's going to be 7, which is 12 minus 5. 12 plus 5, 17. 12 into 5, 60. 12 by 5, the quotient, it will be divided by 2 because 5 2s are 10. So the quotient will be 2 and the remainder also will be 2. Okay, I will take another 2 minutes to quickly talk a little bit about the division operators, because rest is what we already know, just so that it is known and predictable in terms of what could be the outputs. Okay. Now, note that the division operator, which is a by b, is basically what is written in this program also, right? This basically / stands for the division operator. Okay. Now, if we use division operator for 2 numbers, right? Or rather, let's say the better word is 2 integers, always remember that the resulting quotient will also be an integer. Okay, it's not the case that if we will divide 2 integers, right, the output or the quotient will be a floating point value. Okay, and only if one of the operands are the values which are being used, is a floating point number, right, we will get a result which will also be floating point. Okay, just to reiterate, if you will divide 2 integers only, the output will always be integer. If you want the output to be a floating point value, you have to make sure one of the inputs also has to be a floating point value. Meaning that if you will do 9 by 2, the output is going to be 4. If you will do 9.0 by 2, okay, then in this case, the output will be 4.5. Like I said, any one of the operands has to be like this. If I do 9 by 2.0, in that case also, it is going to be 4.5. And then if I do 9.0 by 2.0, in that case also, it is going to be 4.5. Okay, so this is about division operator. Let me quickly take up about the modulo operator similarly as well, and then I'll take up questions from the chat. So when we talk about modulo operator, the modulo operator, remember, it always gets the remainder. Okay, so when let's say A is basically equal to 7, okay, and it is, we try to basically divide by B is equal to 4. Okay, then we know that they both won't be divided at all, right? Because 4's first multiple is 4 only, and then it is directly 8. Okay, then the remainder is going to be 3 in this case, because no division happened whatsoever. Okay, so remember that the modulo operator is primarily used with integer values only. Clear to everyone? Ma'am, how to get 1 by 3? I think Sai Venkat, I have answered your question, right? Already? Over here, correct? Awesome. Any other questions? If not, I will jump on to assignment operators. Or you can just write a yes in the chat and I'll move forward. Awesome. Next, post this, what we basically have, the second one, it's where we talk about Java assignment operators. Okay, so assignment operators, like the name suggests, I'll write down over here only so that you have good set of notes. Assignment operators. Like the name suggests, assignment operators, right, are basically used in Java to assign value to variable. That is what assignment means. For example, int age, right, and age is equal to 5. Here, this equal to sign is an assignment operator. Now, if you will go back to your basic maths that you basically used to do in school, right, there, it kind of was also used to compare. Okay, but here, remember that assignment operator is basically a single equal to sign, where whatever is present on the right hand side is assigned to left hand side. So try to start, I would say, reading the assignment operators in an opposite way. Usually we know age is equal to 5. So it's usually 5 is a number or a value which is assigned to the variable on the left hand side. Okay, some of the more popularly used variables is what I will talk about. Okay, so we have plus equal to sign, minus equal to sign, sort of like that. Okay, so let's say I do int value is equal to age. Okay, I'll first show how it works, and then I'll also tell you like how can you expect the output to be. Okay, so in this case, basically, again, it's a assignment operator, right? So whatever was in the age variable, which was 5, has basically been assigned to val. So if I just try to run this, 5 will basically be printed, right? Because right hand side was age, which is a variable with the value 5, got assigned to the left hand side, which is the val variable. Okay, so now what if I also do something like this. Okay. And then I do val is equal to plus equal to A. Okay. So this is actually a short way of writing this. Okay. So ideally, what I already told you, whatever is on the right hand side get assigned to the left hand side. Right. So what was in the right hand side? Val. What was the value of val? 5. What is the value in A? 20. So ideally, 25 should be assigned in the val variable. And let's see if this does happen or not. It does, right? So basically, if you ever want to do something like this, there is a short way of writing that all together. And trust me, now you might feel like for beginners that, this is better, this is more intuitive. But trust me, when you will, make progress in the course, you will feel this syntax to be way more readable. Okay. Like the plus sign works over here, similar is the other sign works as well. So if I do something like this, that means whatever was or what it represents is equal to val is equal to val minus A. Okay. So if I do something like this, val star equal to A, right? What that basically means is val is equal to val star. That means the multiplication has happened. Same thing works for all the basic arithmetic operators, which we just learned. Okay. So this is also valid. A, which basically means val is equal to val by A. Okay. And last for the modulo as well, it works the same way. Okay. So if I do val this, right, it will be val is equal to val this. And this we already know how the concept work and what is going to be, I would say, the predicted outcome. Okay, so these are all the assignment operators where the assignment, I would say, operator is present. Along with that, it could also have arithmetic operators, but this is what it pretty much means in all the scenarios. Clear to everyone? Any questions in assignment operators? Anything that you would like to ask? Everyone is good? Or just Venkat is good? Like I said, there's not too much of things that, like you'll find very difficult. Just know the basic concepts and that should be good. Okay. Perfect. So now that we know about the basic Java assignment operators, the next one that we will talk about is going to be the relational operators. Okay. So when we talk about relational operators, like the name suggests, we'll try to see what it does. Again, let me show you by doing relational operators. Right? So when we talk about relational operators, relational operators are used to basically check the relationship. Okay, between two operands. Okay, for example, A less than B, something like that. Okay, always remember relational operators as an output, right? They always either return true or false. Okay, they are not in the capability of returning anything else, which makes sense also, right? If you try to compare something, either they will be compared and they will be equal, otherwise they won't be equal. So in any case, there are only two possible outputs to this. Okay, how would that work is what we can see. Int A, let's say, is 8 and let's say B is equal to 20. Okay, something like that. Any random value can be taken over here. Okay, now initially what I would do is I will also see the values over here. So if I do this, this and this, Okay, so it will print the value of A, it will add a space in between, and then it will print the value of B. Let me show you as well in case like anyone feels how it's working. That is how it's working. Okay. Now, after this, first we will talk about this operator. Okay, this operator is basically is kind of called as, like in English, if you want to know, is equal to. Okay, kind of like that. So I can directly just do this, right? So this is a very short way of writing a lot of code where I want to compare two values A and B. Okay, now like I said, every relational operator will either return you a value true or false. And when I kind of read it in English, it means A is equal to B, which is false. So when I run this piece of code, it should actually give me false only because I'm trying to compare both. And this kind of sign means is equal to. So remember, in programming languages, if you have to compare two set of values, you have to use double equal to sign. Okay. Similarly, we have more as well. For example, I do A minus equal to B. Okay. So this kind of, when spoken in English, means not equal to over here. Can you predict the output for this when I run this? True, right? Because A is indeed not equal to B, which is good. Now let me write a bunch of more and I want you to tell me what the output will be for all of those, okay? Because the next ones are actually very simple. So we have A greater than B. You have A less than B. So these are all again relationship operators where we are trying to compare the relationship. A greater than or equal to B. A less than equal to B. What do you think will be the output for all? So this is false, right? This is true. My hinges, this should be false. This should be true, right? This should be false. This should be true. And this should be false. Let's see if the output over here actually is the same. It indeed is. Okay. So relational operators, always remember, relational operators, right, are used in the decision-making process. Okay. Like it's very simple, right? You always, when you're trying to take a decision, you always would like to consult something which either tells you true or false, right? So relational operators becomes very important when you're trying to take a part in the decision-making process. And they're also very popularly used when we will learn iterative statements or loops, as we like to call it. Clear to everyone? Any questions, any doubt with relational operators? To compare strings, Venkat, it's a different logic. Okay. Like when we will go in the class of strings now, there we will try to learn this concept. Because again, string is not a primitive data type. So these are all operators which kind of also doesn't work the way how they should for string, right? Because string is a non-primitive data type, the data type that we actually created on our own. Okay, so we import a string class to actually be able to use the string over here as a data type, and it has a bunch of functions already available which help us to compare values. I think one of the examples you already gave. Okay. So again, all of this conversation that we are doing right now is again valid for primitive data types. For non-primitive data types, when we will do them, you will understand how the comparison and relationship and everything works with them. Clear to everyone? Then I'll move on to logical operators. Awesome. So once we are done with this, the next one that we have is Java logical operators. Okay. So Okay, so when we talk about logical operators, understand that logical operators are basically used to check whether an expression is true or false. Okay, so an expression would already be given to you and you would have to check whether that expression is true or false. Okay, expression is nothing but how exactly you try to kind of define a statement or I would say a equation kind of like a thing. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's actually just talk about expressions only first, right? And then we will come back to logical operators, right? We can do that way also, where we can try to understand them. But again, we'll touch upon, I would say, expressions and blocks after this, because it's a very simple topic only. There's not much to do over there. Okay. Again, they are used in decision-making process only, right? So there are three logical operators as we like to know them. Okay. The first one is this, right? It's an and operator, or how we like to call it, logical and operator. Okay. What it does, it basically takes up a expression. Again, an expression could be any statement over here, and you basically try to compare two expressions whenever you use logical operations. Okay, like I said, it is used to compare logical expressions. So it could be expression 1 and expression 2. Let's say there are two expressions, and if you put a logical and sign between them, what output will it give is, it will give you true only if both expression 1 and expression 2 are basically true. Otherwise, in all scenarios, it is basically going to give you the output false. For example, I do 5 greater than 3, which is true as an expression 1, and the expression 2 is 8 greater than 5. Now, both sides of the equations are actually true. That is why when you will try to run this piece of code, the output will also be true. But for example, if I do something like this, where I do 5 less than 3, in that case, what will happen is, you will see it will give me false. Why? Because this side of the expression is false. So even if one of the sides of operations are false, it will give you the output false, and only when both are true is when it will give you true. Clear to everyone? Tarun, there will be situations where we will talk about how true and false are considered as 0 and 1, but over here, consider them as Boolean values only. Okay, I know the concept which you're talking about, that is also there, but in terms of operators, we try to think of them as true and false only. Okay. Okay, so after this, the next one, the next operator that we have is basically this, or how we like to call it is the logical or operator over here. Okay, and is like, try to understand where both sides and should be true. This is logical or operator, where if I will give expression 1, right, and I will put in between expression 2, right? In this case, what it basically does is, it basically gives you the output true if either of the expression 1 or expression 2 is actually true. Only when both of the expressions are false when it actually gives you false. Let's try out. So in this case, 5 is, let's say, less than 3 and 8 is greater than 5. So in this case, the output is true. Why? Because this side of the equation is true. Let's say next I do 5 greater than 3 and 8 less than 5. Even in this situation, it will be true because this side of the equation is true. When I will do this, right, where I will do 5 is less than 3 and 8 is less than 5. When I know both sides of the expressions are basically false, right, then it will give me false. Yes. Let's try out. And you can see it indeed gives true, true, false, which is what was predicted over here as well. So this is the second logical operator. Let me quickly jump on to the third one as well. The third one is this exclamation mark, which is known as the logical NOT operator. Okay. So logical NOT operator is basically always used with a single expression, not with multiple expression, unlike AND and OR. Okay. So here what basically happens it is basically kind of negation. So what it will return is, it will return true if the expression is false. Okay. And what it will do is and vice versa as well. So it kind of gives you opposite of what exactly the operation is. For example, if I do 5 equal to 3. So this is false, right? This particular equation is basically false. But if I put this mark in front of it, right, that means it is going to give me the opposite. So although this expression is false, but since I have put a negation mark in front of it, the output is basically going to be true. Okay, so it gives the opposite. For example, again, over here, 5 is, let's say, greater than 3. This is true. 5 is indeed greater than 3. But indeed, because I have put a negation mark over here or a logical NOT operator over here, it is going to give the output. So this is basically how I would say the logical operators work. And we have 3 logical operators. Clear to everyone? Any questions, any doubt in logical operators? So in this, what happens is, if your expression is basically true, and if you will do NOT of expression, the output will be false. If your expression is false, but if in front of it you put and NOT of false, the output will be true. So 5 is not equal to 3, but since I put a and in front, I put a NOT in front of it, the output was true. Here 5 is greater than 3. This is true, but because of the NOT operator, the output is false. So it kind of toggles the output. Okay, Abhay? Awesome. Any other questions to anyone? We'll do quickly after this the Java unary operators, and then we'll take a quick break. Meanwhile, others can try out the operations that we did in the break. Can I get a quick yes or a thumbs up in the chat from everyone? Is there anything in the chat? Any questions, any doubt? Nothing? Okay, I don't see any questions. Ma'am, what about lazy evaluation? Again, Tarun, lazy evaluation works for the concept of lambda expressions. Okay, so when you use the latest Java versions to write lambda programming and do lambda expressions, that is where you use the concept of lazy evaluations. If you would like to read about it, I can share some, good articles about how lazy evaluation also works. But in terms of basic programming that we do over here, we don't use that concept of lazy evaluation. Okay. maybe I'll take an extra class where I will talk about all of these things. Okay. So maybe keep writing these down, right? We can obviously have maybe an extra class on some Sunday and kind of do all these topics also. Okay. So like people who know about these topics, they'll be able to kind of learn more on how these works as well. I personally like lambda programming a lot. So that's how I know about all of these. And I really like working on all of these as well. Okay, so we'll definitely keep one class where we will talk about all of these operations. Okay, so the last one that we have after this is going to be Java unary operators. Okay, so when we talk about Java unary operators, right? So unary, I hope everyone can kind of understand where this conversation is leading to. Right? Unary, let's say binary means 2. Unary means 1. Okay. So unary operators are basically used with one operand only. Right? For example, we have plus plus. Plus plus is a unary operator that increases the value of, I would say, a particular variable by 1. Okay, so these are kind of some of the popularly used unary operators that we have. Okay, along with that, we also have increment and decrement operators also by plus plus and minus minus, right? Plus plus kind of increases the value of an operand by 1, whereas minus minus kind of decreases it by 1. Okay, so for example, if I do int num is equal to 5 and I do plus plus num, right, what will happen is the value of num will basically be increased by 1. My bad. Right, so you can see int increases by 1 the moment you do plus plus. Okay, so there is also the concept of should you put plus plus before and minus, which is like the concept of increment and decrement operators. Don't worry, we'll kind of talk about all of those as well. Okay, first let's take an overall idea on what all these operators basically are. Okay, so let's say I have int a is equal to 12 comma b is also 12. Okay, now let's say I have int res1, res2, two variables as well. Okay, so if I do the value of a, it will be obviously 12 only, right? What if I do res1 equal to plus plus a? Okay, and I try to print the output in res1. Okay, then let's say I do another operation where I do res2 equal to minus minus b. Okay, so this is the increment operator and this is the decrement operator. Okay, and now if you will try to do res2 and you try to print the value, open this. So you can see the value of a and b initially both was 12. When you do, and the 12 is printed over here as well, when you do plus plus a, right, and then you try to store it in res1, you see that the value of a has actually been incremented by 1 step over here. That is why you basically see the res value to be 13. And for same value b, if I try to decrease it, right, it basically, I would say, kind of decreases the value by 1 and you basically get minus minus b, or you basically get the output as 11. Okay, so when we talk overall about all the unary operators which are there, we have plus, right, which is known as unary plus, right? It is basically not necessary to just use numbers, right? If you will remember when we were printing, right? This is nothing but unary operator, correct? Where we are kind of using it. But again, this is a plus operator, or you can say almost say arithmetic, because kind of you are doing a addition operation over here as well. Okay, so similarly, we have unary minus also, we have plus plus, we have minus minus, and then we have logical not kind of like operators also. So this kind of unary operators is nothing, not a separate class of operators, just that if any operator is sort of used with a single operand, we kind of call it as a unary operator. For example, if you will go to logical operators, in logical operators, this and, or I would say not, sorry, this not was basically used since with a single operation expression. That's why it can be called as a unary operator over here. Okay, so any unary operators are those which are used with a single operand. Okay, so this is nothing but a unary operator, right? Along with that, this is a unary operator. This is also a unary operator. Okay, so this is how the concept of unary operator works. Here also, for example, I do this. Value of A is this. This is also a unary operator over here. So these are a bunch of ways how unary operators are basically used. Again, Vimal, I just said, I just mentioned that we will talk about that. Don't worry. Plus plus A and minus minus A, the postfix and prefix, we will discuss that. I just want to make sure first everyone is clear with this much, right? And if anyone has any questions, they can ask. Any questions to anyone? Everyone is clear, absolutely. All the codes will be shared, Venkat, don't worry. I have already created a Git repo. I think I just forgot to share in the last class. Today I'll add today's codes also, and then I will share all together. Perfect. Should we take a quick break? It's been almost 1 hour, 20 minutes that we have been doing. Awesome. Okay, let's take a quick 10 minutes break, or maybe a 12 minutes break, right? It's 10:18 right now, right? We will meet back at 10:30. The things that we are left to talk about is the difference between this and the difference between this. Along with that, the difference between this and the difference between this, right? Once we are done with that, I'll quickly walk you through what are expressions and blocks in Java as a programming language. And if time persists, we will also start with conditional statements, which is going to be if else. Okay, so this is what the agenda for the next part of the class is. Let's see how much we can cover. Okay, take a quick break. Take a quick break. Come back after the break, and then we will continue. All right, everyone is back. Should we move ahead? Okay, so whenever we talk about programming, and specifically when we talk about operators and in that increment and decrement operators, so this plus plus and increment decrement operators can actually be used as both prefix and postfix to the operands. Okay, so we'll actually understand what that means. Okay, so we know that the increment operator basically increases the value of a variable by 1. Okay. Similarly, the decrement operator basically decrements or decreases the value of a variable by 1. Okay. Simple enough so far, right? What we have, basically it gets incremented by 1 and decremented by 1. So far, it was very simple and straightforward, okay? But the thing is, if I do a is equal to 5, it can actually be used in 4 ways. I can do plus plus a, I can do a plus plus, I can do minus minus a, I can do a minus minus. This will return me 6. And when a value is 6 and I do this, this will return me 7. This will return me 6. And this will return me 5. Okay. So there is a very big difference of how these plus plus and minus minus operators actually work. Okay. Let's talk about first over here. Let's say, so the rule is very simple. If I use plus plus operator, okay, as a prefix as in before the operand, like plus plus value. Okay, so what will happen is the value of val is incremented by 1. Okay, and then it returns the value. What does that mean is the moment you do plus plus a, so first what will happen is because it's plus plus, that means the value needs to be incremented by 1. So what actually happens is the value of a is actually increased. So if a was 5, a actually as a variable becomes 6 in the container. A is going to now store 6 and then the value 6 is basically returned. But if I use plus plus operator, okay, as a postfix, post as in after the operand, which is going to be val plus plus, then what will happen is the original value of val is actually returned first. Okay, first you return the value, right, and then val is incremented by 1. So the difference is in the ordering of how it works. Okay, so in this case, when I do plus plus a, what will happen is first the value of a will be incremented from 5 to 6, and then what will happen is the value will be returned. But if you use val plus plus, okay, so or in this case, let's say I do a plus plus, in that case, first the original value of a, which was 5, will be returned and then the value of a will actually be incremented. Okay, so let's see a quick demo as well. And the same concept is valid for minus minus also. Okay, so just understanding plus plus is enough. Let's say int var1 is equal to 5. Okay, and var2 is also 5. Let's do the same value only. I do this. Now, guess what will be the output based on what I told you over here. If I do a postfix, what will be returned? This is the definition. I'll just put the definition here also in case anyone wants to look at the definition again and then tell me what do they think will be the answer. 5, right? Because what is actually happening is that 5 is basically displayed. The reason for that is that we first return the value and then the var1, I would say, is increased to 6. But what if I do this? In this case, what will happen is var2 is actually increased to 6 first, okay? And then var2 is only displayed. So you return basically var2 only in this situation, var2. Okay? So in this case, 6 should appear. Let's see. It is 5 and 6 indeed. Clear to everyone? What is the difference between plus plus, prefix and plus plus postfix? Again, the only difference is the ordering of the output. The same thing is happening in both cases. In the same thing, the value is also getting incremented, and in the same thing, you are returning also. Just that if you do pre, like how I like to learn, if it is pre, first the increment will happen, then it will be returned, right? But if it's post, so first A will be returned and then after that it will be incremented. That is what the difference is between both of them. Same, the logic goes for minus minus as well. I hope like this will help to extrapolate that logic for minus minus also. Okay, so I think Vimal asked this question. Vimal, I hope you're clear. What's the difference between both of them? Awesome. All right. Again, I'm trying to kind of make it as simplistic and as easy as I can while trying to, explain you the logics, right? So in case if you have any questions or any doubts, anything like that, feel free to kind of let me know also. I'll try to help you out in the best way possible. Okay, so the next thing, the next concept after this is the concept of expressions and blocks, and then the expression blocks and statements, and kind of there I want to talk about a scoping also, and then we have if and else. Okay, so I'm thinking first let's do if else, because the way if else is basically working, you will be able to understand the logic of blocks and everything, right? Of how block statements and everything work. Then we'll come back to expressions and statements and everything, right? Because then you'll have I would say, then if you will do expressions later, you'll have bigger set of examples to kind of understand the concept. Okay. All right. So one thing after this is, which is like also left, after this, we also have bitwise operators. But like I mentioned in the very start, bitwise operators, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do them right now, because whenever the class for bit manipulation will happen, there anyway, this concept is going to happen in great detail, and you'll understand, what's the overall idea behind bit is and why bitwise operators are considered to be faster, because they actually don't work on decimal numbers, but actually the bit values. Right. So there, I think this discussion is kind of pending to when we actually do bit manipulation. There we'll have a better idea. Clear to everyone? Should we move to conditional statements and talk about if else? Awesome. I would need my iPad also for this. So let me just quickly take a minute to connect that as well. I would want to kind of write each and every line and explain you the flow. Let me open another sheet. All of you can see the iPad screen, right? Visible to everyone? Perfect. Okay, so next, after having talked about the operators that we have, we're going to finally move ahead and talk about conditional statements. Okay, so now conditional statements actually are very important, and they are kind of used in terms of real life English statements in the world that we live in as well, right? For example, let's say when I say if, and then I put in a condition, if it is raining outside, then I will stay at home. Otherwise, I will go out, right? So this is what in the terms of programming also it gets translated to, right? If you put if, then you put a condition over here, right? And based on the fact that whether that condition is true or not, if that condition is true, then you kind of execute the then part of the code, kind of can write it like this, right? And otherwise, you kind of, if the condition is false, then you kind of execute some other piece of code. A very good real life example for that would be, I believe all of you would have used Amazon Prime at some point in your life, right? So when you use Amazon Prime, there are two kinds of model that exist in Amazon Prime, right? Either you have the Prime subscription or you do not have a Prime subscription, okay? So it is kind of like that in terms of how conditional statements would be implemented. Although I believe the logic would be slightly more complex than how it would have actually worked. But just to kind of show you, like, you know, how conditional statements sort of work. So understand that if I am not a Prime user, the screen for me is going to be different, where I'm going to be asked to kind of sign into Prime and to be a part of Prime, right? Whereas if I am already a Prime member, right? If I am already a Prime member, right? In that case, my screen is actually going to be a little different, where I would directly be able to start watching the movies and taking benefit of the subscription that I have. Okay, so like on a very grassroots level, how the logic would have been in that case is if Prime subscription equal to true, right? Again, this is a what kind of an operator? We just discussed that this is more or less like a relational operator, where we are trying to kind of check the relationship. So if Prime subscription is true, then show some screen, right? With all movies accessible, maybe a different UI. Whereas if the Prime subscription is not there, then some other screen would be there, where we would constantly be asking the user to be a part of the Prime subscription, and they won't be able to actually see what exactly movies are available, and they won't be able to play as well. Okay, a very good, simple, and a legit real life example of how if-else statements actually work. So we have if, we sort of put a condition in that, right? And we have two blocks of code. So anything that is written between two braces, or I would say two brackets over here, curly brackets over here, is known as a block. Okay. So if the condition would have been true, then this piece of code, whatever written between this, would have executed. Otherwise, if it would have been false, then this piece of code would have been executed. Okay. So this is how the concept of if else kind of a statements actually work. Okay. The syntax is very simple. You have if, so you put if, you put condition over here, whichever is the condition do you really want to check. Always remember that the condition over here is supposed to either give the output true or false. Okay. The condition over here cannot give a numerical output like 0, 1, 2, right? Because we only have two pieces of block. This piece of block will get executed when the condition is true, and this piece of code will get executed when the condition is false, right? So we basically only have two possible cases, or two possible, I would say, outputs over here. That is why when you compare also, you use relational operators, which I was just talking about, right? Relational operators kind of help in the decision-making process. Okay. So if let's say we try to see demo of if else. Let's say Boolean prime subscription equal to true. Okay. Now, if prime subscription is equal to true. Okay. And again, I always focus on the fact of writing optimized and more good quality code. There is no need to do this. You can just directly do this also. Okay. If this kind of a code only works when the condition is actually already, or the variable is actually Boolean. Okay. So either you can write directly just is prime subs, then also it will work. To be more explicit, you can write this. And let's say I want to say you have, or let's say, welcome to the prime subscription. Else, please become a member of Amazon Prime now. Okay, sort of like this also works. Okay, so because here prime subscription is equal to true, right? That is why this condition was true. And since this condition was true, this piece of code was executed. If the prime condition would have been false, this is true, this is false, this is true, this is not equal as an expression. So else is executed and you basically have please become a member of Amazon Prime now because you were not. Okay, so this is how if else as a statements work. Another thing which students always ask is that it is always necessary to use if else together. No, it's not. You can just use if as also just as it is. For example, if I do int number is equal to 10, it's not necessary to always have an else accompanying with if. So if I do if num is less than 0, right? That means, let's say, it is a negative number. Even writing this much piece of code is absolutely fine. And when this speed of code is actually working, maybe I also write, now you are outside the if block. Just to show you an example that not always, if both if and else block can never be executed, either if or the else block is executed, and once you're out of it, the rest of the code works as the way as it should. Line by line, it is being worked out. So it says, please become a member of Amazon Prime now because the person was not. The number is equal to 10. Is the number less than 0? No. So this condition was not true. So nothing basically got executed and directly we just came. Now you are outside the if block. If this number would have been minus 10, then we would have 3 lines of output in the code where this basically got executed. And since the number was less than 0, the condition was true. This piece of code also got executed, and then line number 22. So it's very important to know how the code flow is working. And along with that, it is also important to know the purpose of over here relational operators. I will also show you an example with logical operators also, how logical operators, which I said, contribute to the decision-making process. But like this is a very simple example to kind of help you understand how it works, right? In the real world also, I believe Amazon would have sort of done like a logic like this, right? Check like this to kind of see which kind of screen to show to the users. Clear to everyone so far? Any questions in terms of syntax of the code? Any questions in terms of flow of the code? Like how is the flow working? Anything like that? Everyone is absolutely clear? Awesome. So this was about what exactly if else is. First is just if. How do you just use the if statement? And then we have if else. Okay. The third that we have is if else, if, and then else. Okay. Now, again, like I said, I always try to learn all of these concepts by taking as much, examples as we can and trying to, learn the way we could to know that exactly how these concept works. We'll take another example to kind of know, what the logic behind this is, and maybe a real life relation to the statements that we know as well. Okay. So, I believe all of you must have been or must have used Hotstar also at some point of time in your life. Right? So, if you would know, even with Hotstar, it does work a little differently with how it works with Amazon. So, in Hotstar, it shows you a different screen if you have no subscription whatsoever. Okay. If you do have a basic subscription of, I think it's like a super kind of like a subscription or a premium like kind of like a subscription, it shows you a different screen, right? And then there is also a super kind of like a subscription, which is like even a different subscription where it shows you more set of things and more set of movies and something like that, right? So we have a place where there is no subscription at all. Then we have a super subscription, and then we have a premium subscription over here, right? This is the concept of if, else if, and else. Okay. How does that work again in the world of programming code? Something like this. So this, I'll just maybe drop comments also to show relevant examples. If else, if, and now we will see if, else if. Else if, and then else. Okay. So let's say Boolean, or maybe I say Hotstar subscriptions. Okay. So let's say in my code, I have already written the logic that if the value of a Hotstar subscription is 0, that means it's no subscription. If the value is 1, right, that means it's a super subscription. And if the value is true, that means it's a premium subscription. Okay. This is the way how I am basically doing this, right? You may use a character kind of a comparison also, where if the character is n, that means like, to show you copy paste over here. Again, it depends on how you like to write your code. If there is no subscription, maybe we can keep the character as n. If it's a super subscription, maybe we can keep the character as S, right? And if it's a premium subscription, we can keep the character as P. Feel free to do the way you like. But how it would work is we will do if, right, Hotstar subscription is equal to 0. I'm trying to compare two integer values, right? Right? So we could say now is a good time to get a Hotstar subscription. Okay. Then you have else if, right, Hotstar subscription could be equal to 1. Okay. In that case, I could say, why don't you upgrade to premium subscription? Okay. And then if both are not there, if is also not true and else if is also not true, right, then only else is basically possible, means it is a premium subscription. Okay. And then I could say, welcome to Hotstar Premium. Okay, so this is the typical scenario of how you should write a code of if, else if, right? There could be any number of else if, right? If you have, this is a Hotstar example where only 3 types of subscriptions were there, right? If you actually come across a platform which can have more, feel free to add as many as you could. Okay, there is no rule as to how much else if statement could be there, but in the end, it should always be kind of I would say closed with a else. Okay. So over here, we have the else statement. We can quickly run this as well and see how it works. Right? So you can see Hotstar subscription was equal to 1. So the message was, why don't you upgrade to premium subscription? Okay. And let's say if I put this as 0, right? Then it says now is a good time to get a Hotstar subscription. Okay. Just to kind of show this. Now, I feel this code can actually be made better. Okay. What if, for example, someone says 4, okay, which is not a valid subscription altogether, although this case might not be possible. But what if somehow there is some issue happens? Okay. Now, because it says 4 over here, this was not true. This was also not true. Your code went to else and actually said it's a Hotstar premium, but that's not actually true, right? It's not actually a Hotstar premium subscription. This is some invalid input. So to actually make sure that error handling is better in your code, let's do this. Hotstar subscription is 2. Then we say this. Otherwise, in all the other scenarios, what I will say is this looks like an invalid. So now if you will write over here 4, then it actually will give you the right error. Okay. So although from a high level overview, sometimes your code looks like it's actually good, right? Again, it's not always the case. Your code should be able to actually kind of, handle better cases and work in a more better way and make sure all corner cases are handled as well. Clear to everyone? If else and if else, if else. Vimal and Akshat, if else or else if and switch cannot be always used interchangeably. Okay. So switch statement, I would say one of the subparts is how else if. So all of the else if statements can be converted into a switch statement, but all of the switch statement code cannot be converted to a else if code. Okay, that is what the logic is. We will talk about switch. There you will understand why I'm saying this also. But for the time being, just understand it this way. Okay, all else if codes, if else if codes can be converted to switch codes, but all switch statement kind of codes cannot be converted into if else code. Okay, so for this, if you may feel like, yes, you can convert into a switch statement kind of a code as well. Okay, and I will kind of, for others, I will talk about switch statements also. So don't worry about that. Clear to everyone? Rohit, we have already talked about how to take user input, right? Over here, if I just do input dot next int, right? And just make a scanner object class for this, this should work, correct? Where now instead of us, the user will be entering the Hotstar subscription. Although that is never the case. In our databases, we already have the Hotstar subscription associated with the user, and then we just try to present the screen to them. Okay. No, Sayantan, this is not. I will talk about nested if else also. Don't worry, I have amazing examples for all of them. This much is clear to everyone? Can I get a quick yes in the chat? Then I will quickly talk about nested if else statements also. I'm just reverting this back. Okay, now I'll show you one more example or one more of a very good use case. Okay, so this is a logged in Prime subscription. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you have actually encountered this in your real life, but this is a subscription of mine, okay, where I already have the Prime subscription, okay. So I like a particular series a lot, which is Line of Duty, okay. And if I go in my Prime subscription, you can see it's a Prime subscription. If I click on this, it actually doesn't allow me to directly play this, right? Ideally, there should have been a play button where I would actually be able to directly see the movies I want to see because I have the Prime subscription. But in Amazon, what happens is inside, even if you have Prime subscription, not all the TV series and not all the movies are accessible to you, okay? For example, although I do have the Prime subscription, I am not still allowed to see Line of Duty series over here because I have to buy an additional subscription, which is again a very meager amount, but I still have to buy an additional subscription either by AMC, right, or by Acorn, okay. Essay like these, there are multiple other subscriptions also available, right, where directly, even though you have Prime, you still have to pay a particular on top of subscription fee over there in order to be able to access a bunch of series. That is what nothing but an example of nested if-else statements over here, okay. If I will go back now, let's say the movie that I want to watch is this. Let's say the movie that I want to watch is Line of Duty. So even though I do have the Prime subscription, okay, let's say nested if else, right? So let's say the string movie is or series is Line of Duty, okay. So in order to be able to access it, right, I should first of all have the Prime subscription, okay. When I have the Prime subscription, inside of that also, if I have either, see, now I'll show you a very good example of logical operators. It says, now I think all of you, like for those watching this, will be able to help out. So the idea is, if you want to watch Line of Duty, either you should have a Acorn subscription or a AMC subscription. Any of these will work. So if I have the Prime subscription, I will come in this piece of code, right? If I don't have the Prime subscription, then the simple idea is cannot watch the movie, okay? But even if I do have the Prime subscription, right, here, over here, either I need over here the Acorn subscription or I need the AMC subscription. Now, what do you think? Which operator will come over here to kind of actually make us say that, you know, yes, you can watch the movie? Logical or operator. Correct. Very nice. Okay. So logical, if this is kind of true, and if any of these are true, someone should be able to actually watch the, okay. So you could, let's say, have multiple variables over here. Boolean Prime subscription is, let's say, true, and Boolean Acorn, I will comment this out because it is taking two different values. Okay. All right. Acorn subscription is, let's say, false, and AMC subscription is also false, right? And I could put also a case, for example, if none of these, so else will only happen when none of the subscriptions are actually there, okay? So in that case, I could say we recommend buying either Acorn or AMC subscription to enjoy this movie. Okay, and why don't you take Prime subscription? Okay, so in this case, what will happen is, although the Prime subscription is true, and neither Acorn or nor AMC subscription is actually there, right? So this is also false. This is also false. This was true. So you came in this piece of code, You will execute this piece of code, but this is also false. This is also false. So in that case, what will happen over here is, it says, see, you had prime, so it's not giving you the prime error. It says we either recommend buying Icon or AMC subscription to enjoy this movie. But let's say the person doesn't have the prime subscription altogether, right? So in that case, right, it says cannot watch the movie. Why don't you take prime subscription? But let's say the person has the prime subscription and along with that has AMC subscription also. Okay, so then it says, yes, you can watch it, enjoy, because prime subscription was true. So this piece of code was executed. And in this condition, expression 1 was false, but since expression 2 was true, this piece of code executed and it says, yes, you can watch the movie, enjoy. Okay, again, like I said, I always try to kind of help through examples to actually understand the concepts. Was I successful in explaining the conditional statements? Thank you, Anmol. Thanks. Any questions, any doubts? Now is the time to ask. Like I said, we are always just, again, I always want to teach through real life examples only. Okay, so that you understand more and you know, your brain, which is kind of eventually going to do web development, kind of trains itself like that as well. Okay, so maybe to make the code like even better, you can just append this movie name over here. So your code becomes more verbose, right? So it will say, yes, you can watch the movie, enjoy line of duty. Okay, maybe like, again, these are just ways to make your code even better. So this is how you can. If anyone has any questions or any doubts, now is the right time to ask. Otherwise, I think we are done with if-else statements over here. So when we talk about conditional statements, we have if-else and then we have switch statements. Switch we'll do in the next class. Yes, I am going to be using Venkat IntelliJ only for all the concepts in this course. No, Vimal, there's not really any concept like that. Like there's no convention as such, but ideally you should avoid not having too many, because then for the person who's reading the code, it becomes difficult to kind of read it. Okay. Akshat, for that, the concept of typecasting and moving from a smaller data type to a higher data type is what actually comes into play and probably why you would be getting the error. In the next class, we are going to kind of discuss also how to convert byte to int. So how to go from a smaller data type to a one which is wider, and how to move from a wider data type to a smaller one. We are going to discuss all that. So when you try to go from int to byte, okay, it's actually not possible to do that. So we come across overflow conditions, but byte can essentially kind of scale itself to above ones. Okay. So I think next class will help you understand that. If you have the question with you, you can share the question with me, or like the code that you've written with me, I'll reply to you on Discord with the right answer. Okay. Rohit, expressions in block. I don't think we have the time right now. It's already 11:10. We'll do in the next class. So the next class will focus on switch statements, and it will focus on expression in blocks is anyway a 5 minutes topic. It'll focus on that, and then we'll have problem solvings on the if-else concepts. Sayantan, lead code doesn't have very basic problems on if-else. Okay, so I think lead code kind of starts its problems from the concept of arrays only, right? So before that, you can try HackerRank. But once we actually start, when we actually complete if-else statements and loops and all, then we'll move to lead code questions only. But for the now, for basics, just to HackerRank, I've also created a quiz on the platform. Please make sure you do that quiz also. You'll kind of become more comfortable with the concepts of data type and variables. Okay. Yes, Vimal, there is no difference as such, between else if and switch. It's just that, like I said, the conversion part is what there. When I will tell you the condition for using switch statements, then only you will understand what's the reason behind it. Can we have a Fizzbuzz round? Aditya, after completing if else and loops and doing a bunch of problems on that, we will actually create one small test for all of you, either on HackerRank, and we're still kind of figuring out a few platforms. There, that test will actually test the knowledge of all the topics that we have done so far. Okay. But it'll take approximately 6-7 classes. Perfect then. Any other questions to anyone? Everyone like the session? Anything that you would like to say before we end the session for today? Nothing? Everyone's sleepy? I'll get that checked. Akshay, just send these errors, maybe these messages on the chat also. Okay, on Discord. Okay, Learnist is like a third-party platform that we're actually using. So we just pass on these issues to them and they kind of suggest some solutions if there are any. Venkat, we will talk about that in detail also. We will have a bunch of casual and chat sessions also. There we'll discuss about me and we will discuss about you all as well, and I will share all the details. Don't worry. All right then. I'll see you all in the next session, which is going to be Tuesday now. Okay. Tuesday and Thursday is going to be 9 to 11. Okay. The Saturday class, I will discuss with you all before actually taking the call. Okay. I'm thinking the Saturday one to keep 12 to 2. But again, we always work on the concept of polls. We'll take a poll and then see which day to keep the class. Chalo. All right then. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good night. Bye-bye.